Hi everyone, it's February 5th, 2026 and welcome to this month's A&D Medical Live Q&A where I answer all of your cardiovascular questions live. My name is Abraham, I'm an advanced medical practitioner and pharmacist and the lead of the YouTube channel here at A&D Medical where we create science-backed content focused on cardiovascular health and well-being. I'm just going to close this. Just give me 1 second. So we go live every first Thursday of the month. So mark it in your calendars and we're going to dive straight into your questions. Just a quick note before we get into it, a bit of housekeeping. All the questions I answer here are submitted by viewers like yourselves through the comments on our videos and social media. So if you ever have a question about blood pressure, if you have a question about heart health, anything we cover, or if you're watching this after it's gone live, just leave a comment here on any of our videos and we'll get back to you in next month's episode. I'm just going to make sure everything's working. I'm just looking at the comments. And by the way, I have 2 tabs open. So if you commented, don't worry, I will get back to you. D. Henderson, 2007, happy February to you as well, D. Henderson. Thank you for commenting. So also just to let you all know, we have a special guest today, Adam Huddle, who's the Director of Engineering and Regulatory at A&D Medical in the USA. And he's going to answer all of our blood pressure monitor technical questions today. And I've got a few written for him. So I'm just going to discuss 2 things before we bring him in. He's just setting up right now as well. And by the way, this live today is live on TikTok and on YouTube. So it's the first time we're doing this. So we're really excited about it. So one of the updates I just want to quickly discuss is cold weather heart health update, really. So this is a massive one because I know there's been some massive winter storms across the US and it's cold and it's snowing and it's going to affect the heart too. So I just wanted to touch a little bit about this. In cold temperatures, our blood vessels tighten, okay, which causes our blood pressure to go up and it makes the heart work so much harder. And that increases the risk of heart attacks, strokes, and even cardiac arrest, especially for people with existing or blood pressure issues. So my top tips, first of all, bundle up with layers. So make sure you're wearing layers because trapping air between these layers basically helps us keep warm. And don't forget hats, gloves, warm socks, all that kind of stuff. Don't overdo it is my second tip. Your body's already using a lot of energy to stay warm, and heavy exertion like climbing up hills or shoveling snow, it can make a lot more exertion on the heart because cold air also makes the vessels contract, like we said. So go slow, take breaks, and pay attention if something doesn't feel right. Also, stay hydrated. You might not feel thirsty at the time when it's cold. Usually we always think, oh, warm weather's when you feel thirsty, but you still need to stay hydrated even in the cold because your body needs fluids. And also watch out for those comfort drinks. So if you're having lattes, if you're having cocoa, stuff like that, they taste great, but usually sometimes they have a lot of added sugar that you might not be aware of, and those can be calories, and it's also not good for overall heart health. So quick safety tip, activities like shoveling snow can raise your heart rate and blood pressure even more than a treadmill stress test, okay? So because of that combination of cold exposure and exertion, we need to be very careful. So if you're heading out in the cold weather, dress warmly, pace yourself, listen to your body, and don't push too hard, especially if you have high blood pressure or the heart risks. I'm just going to quickly check the comment section, make sure everything's looking good. We've got a lot of viewers today. We've got 23 viewers at the moment and counting. So thank you so much, and I hope you're enjoying this. I'm just going to quickly answer one last question because I can see Adam just getting mic'd up at the moment. So he's going to come up very soon. But this is a question from Megan Kleckner. This is on our alcohol and how it affects blood pressure video. It was one of our shorts. And she's mentioned, what do you mean by units? Does that mean an ounce? So in the video, I actually discussed UK alcohol recommendations of no more than 14 units per week. That's what I advise patients here in the UK. And in the US, the guidance is phrased a little differently. So it's around 1 standard drink per day for women and up to 2 standard drinks per day for men. All right. So just to clarify what that means, in the US, a standard drink is simply a measured serving. In the UK, a unit is the same idea. It's just a system really to track how much alcohol you're having to make it more simple to track. So the numbers look a bit different on paper, but both systems are doing the exact same thing, measuring alcohol intake, not the size of the glass. And importantly, in both countries, these recommendations are a target. They are an upper safe limit, and drinking less than that is always better. And always remember, alcohol-free days is really important. You shouldn't be drinking back to back. You should always have alcohol-free days. But also remember, alcohol is toxic to the entire body, to every single cell, all right, in our body. So even when people think as moderate drinking, it's okay, it does technically raise your blood pressure as well, and it affects your sleep, and it can affect your weight, and it can affect your rhythm control. And honestly, removing, for personally speaking, removing alcohol myself from my own life was life-changing. My focus, my energy, my sleep all improved. And clinically, we see the same things in patients. Reducing alcohol is one of the quickest wins for blood pressure and overall health. So whether guidance says 14 units per week or whether it says 1 to 2 standard drinks per day, the message behind it is identical. These are upper safe limits, not goals, and lower is better, and it's always better spread out. All right, so we're doing good on the viewers. I'm just gonna now bring in Adam. So how did we do this? Just give me 1 second. Aha, figured it out. All right. Hello, Adam. Welcome to our A&D Medical Live Q&A. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Thank you so much for joining us. Adam, if you don't mind, just give us a little introduction about yourself, your role within A&D Medical, a bit about the engineering team as well, because I love learning about you guys, and and where are you based?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Adam Huddle. I am the Director of Engineering and Regulatory at A&D Engineering. I've been in the medical device space as an engineer for about 18 years, working in neurosurgery, orthopedics, as well as blood collection and separation. And then most recently, my role here at A&D for the last 1.5 years, working on the blood pressure monitors, thermometers, digital weight scales, et cetera. Yeah, so I am based in Denver, Colorado, and our company headquarters are based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We also have a distribution center down in Georgia, but we have associates all across North America. So my team is broken up into Illinois, Georgia, Ann Arbor, New York, so all over the place. But our parent company, A&D, is based in Tokyo, Japan, and that is where the bulk of our engineering work really happens. They are the design authority, which is the legal term for what they do. So my role as the Director of Engineering and Regulatory in the US is to work as the liaison between the United States and our parent company to make sure that we are providing the right specifications, driving them to perform the right testing that is necessary. I'm responsible for ensuring that we are compliant to all US and Health Canada regulations, as well as obtaining clearances for our products. So it's really a lot of work with them. Also, one big thing, which I'm sure I'll touch upon a little bit later, is managing our clinical validations, our clinical studies, which is very, very important. So we have a lot of labs across the US, and so I work with those labs to facilitate those studies to ultimately get us on the validated device list, which is very important. So as far as our engineering team, first I'll take a quick step back. A&D does a lot more than just medical devices. We touch in the automotive space. We are in weight scales for industry, for food and food processing, as well as research. So there's all sorts of stuff that we do. But within the scope of, I'll keep it limited to our medical side of the business. I don't have an exact number of how many engineers, but the last time I was there, I would estimate between 50 and 75 dedicated engineers. That's quality research and development that are based in the Tokyo area that are focused on our products. So we have a very solid team of individuals there, and we have a great team here that are making sure that we are doing everything that we need to do to get our US clearances with the FDA and Health Canada. So I think I got most of your questions there. Was there anything I missed?
No, that was really, really good. And it's a pleasure to have you on. I love speaking to yourself. We spoke before as well, and we spoke to the other engineers at A&D Medical as well, and at A&D Engineering. And I always find it really helpful asking you guys these tricky questions that as a medical provider, we know a little bit about, but when it really comes to those nitty gritty details, I think a lot of the viewers are going to also find this really, really helpful. But it's great to know how big A&D is as a company and how global we are, and how having engineers on the team and constantly researching and developing our products. And you know, I like, for example, I've got the A&D Medical Precision Check Pro device here, which now has the inbuilt thermometer. And I'm always talking about in our videos, like the technology that you guys are bringing is fantastic. And that's essentially really what we need, this continuous development. And it's just so nice to finally have an engineer and actually be able to have someone on the show. So thanks a lot for joining. If it's okay, I'm just going to dive into some questions then. Some of these I've written and some of these are actually from viewers. So is there anything else you want to add before I get started?
No, let's jump into it. Ready for your questions.
So my first question is, so the A&D Medical blood pressure monitors. So how do they actually measure blood pressure? So I'd just love to hear it from an engineer's perspective.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I should start with explaining how a manual blood pressure measurement starts. I think that'll give a lot of background and foundation to explain how our devices work. So everyone's had their blood pressure taken, right? You go to a doctor's office, they attach a cuff to your arm. They've got a pressure gauge on it with a little bulb to fill it up, and then they're using a stethoscope.
Yes.
And that stethoscope, you know, they're listening for sounds, right? So we're relying on the human ear to give us the signals that are necessary to determine blood pressure. So what they do is they will fill that cuff up with air until the point where they no longer hear the sound of the blood flowing through your brachial artery. What this signifies is that your cuff pressure on your arm is now greater than the pressure of your heart while it is compressed, right? So essentially there's a wall there, blood can't pass. So when they're doing that measurement, they take it beyond that point, and then they will slowly deflate the cuff at a rate of about 2 to 3 millimeters of mercury per second. And at that time, the person doing the measurement is listening very carefully for what is called the cortical sounds. There are 4 kind of phases to sounds that are present. There's actually 5 phases. One is silence, but the four phases of sounds that they're listening for. And the first one is basically hearing that transition from silence to hearing some blood flow, right? You can actually hear when the blood is flowing. And so when that occurs, you have hit your systolic pressure, right? And at that point, the pressure of your heart is greater than the pressure of the cuff, which allows the blood to flow. So they continue to listen as the cuff is deflating, and eventually it'll get quieter and quieter and quieter until it goes essentially silent. A little bit of kind of a wavy sound maybe that they hear in the background, but that will indicate what your diastolic pressure is. So they will record that. So they're listening while looking at a gauge to see what the arrow on the gauge is pointing at, and that will tell them what the pressure is. So now that we've established kind of this manual method or the oscillatory method, I'll explain what the oscillometric method is, which is what we use on our devices. So the concept is pretty similar, right? We just kind of eliminate the human that's listening for anything, and we have some built-in detectors, high fidelity sensors that are in our cuff that detect, 1, the pressure, and then 2, what they're looking for are these oscillometric waveform data. And this data is not created necessarily by the sounds that a human would hear, but rather the turbulent flow and the vibrations that are caused on your artery or your veins as a result of this turbulent blood rubbing against your veins. And it creates an oscillometric vibration that we detect through very, very slight pressure differences. So rather than...
And those sensors are in the cuff?
Yes.
Right? So they're actually in the cuff. Okay.
Yes, they're in the cuff. So so it's similar, but they're not listening for a sound. It's listening more for these very minute pressure differences. And there's 2 data sets that the monitor is taking in. One is the cuff pressure, and then one of these oscillometric waveform data. I won't get into all the details of the algorithm, but there's some math involved and some calculations that happen in the background where it takes these 2 data sets, and from there it can get a very, very good approximation of what your systolic and diastolic blood pressure is. So I hope that answered the question kind of at a high level.
Perfect.
One thing worth adding too, maybe that your customers may be interested in, you know, with the oscillometric method, our devices traditionally, we go the same way you would do it in a manual reading, right? You inflate it all the way and then you
Yeah.
deflate, and you're taking your measurement actively as it deflates. But with oscillometric method, you can also go the other way, where you are filling the cuff up as you're listening to these sorts of waveform data,
Right.
which is pretty interesting. The benefit to that is you can shave a couple seconds off of your inflation,
Yeah.
but the downside to it is there's studies that show that that method is a little bit off. I've seen about 4 to 5 millimeters of mercury off. So we elect to go for the deflation method. It is much more accurate and it mimics what you see in the oscillatory method.
That's really interesting. That, yeah, because when I'm in clinic and I'm taking blood pressure, generally speaking, I will go for a manual SPIG option, but I always have my A&D Medical blood pressure monitor handy, and I have one. The team actually know I've got one that's maybe 12 years old. When I first graduated, and I've always had that one. It's my trusty sidekick, but they're just a workhorse A&D Medical blood pressure monitors. But yeah, like you said, when I'm checking someone's blood pressure manually, I will usually inflate to about 180, 190 millimeters of mercury to begin with. And then I'll deflate slowly and listen for those sounds. So, but it's cool to hear how the machine is basically doing the same thing, but probably even more detailed actually, and analyzing stuff that I probably couldn't even hear actually.
You can't hear it. What it's picking up is very slight pressure changes. So it's something that no trained person is going to be able to hear.
Yeah.
Very, very discrete data that is used for this purpose. So yeah.
No, that's perfect. I'm just going to quickly answer some questions, by the way, that are coming in, Adam. Actually, I will answer these questions maybe after because we've got one question from Lady H. Can blood pressure be genetic? I will come back to you because we've got it all here. But we've got a message from D. Henderson. Sorry, Adam, it does cover your face a little bit, this thing, but I'll take it off in a second. Does this manufacturing method set A&D devices apart from other devices? So that'd be interesting to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, so I will say, generally speaking, all devices that are sold in the U.S. have to be FDA cleared, and there are a very high level bar for what needs to occur in your manufacturing processes to be compliant with the law. I would say our manufacturing, we do a lot of our manufacturing in Japan. We do some in South Korea and Vietnam for most of our North America products. And so to that end, I think that does set us apart from a lot of our competitors in that, as an engineer, I guess I can say this, right? The Japanese are known for their exceptional quality. They have always been a driver for me in my career in engineering, right? Is always looking up was, the Japanese methods that have been set up largely with, the automotive industry has set the standard a lot. And that is, kind of worked its way across the culture and it's a very integral part. So when I look at the manufacturing, that comes out of our regions, I would say that absolutely sets us apart compared to some other manufacturers who go with contract manufacturers or maybe utilize manufacturers that aren't dedicated to medical devices. Ours are completely in-house. We manufacture our own products. A couple little exceptions with some smaller products, but all our blood pressure monitors we make. We are responsible for that, and so for that end. It does set us apart largely from a lot of the other brands that are out there that are kind of looking for the cheapest way to manufacture. We're not doing that. We keep it in-house because we understand what quality we are expecting of our devices and our manufacturing process.
100%. And I've always been A&D Medical since, like I said, since I graduated. In the medical world, everybody knows A&D Medical as, like I said, the workhorse, and it is that quality. And I think another thing just to mention as well is that the A&D Medical blood pressure monitors are on the validated device listing. So they are VDL. And I do mention it in quite a lot of our videos that unfortunately a lot of the blood pressure monitors you can buy online, on Amazon. I've even seen it in medical practices here in the UK where they've been using blood pressure monitors that are not on the validated device listing. So I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about validated device listing and for the viewers just to know a bit as well in terms of how stringent it is, the process of actually becoming approved and what that means. That would be really useful actually.
Yeah, absolutely. The VDL, in my opinion, is one of the most important things for if there's anything any of the listeners take away from this meeting today, one of the big ones I want to drive home is the importance of being on the validated device list. So what the validated device list, I'll kind of explain this process. There's an international standard that drives the testing required to prove accuracy for digital blood pressure monitors. For those who are maybe inclined to look at research study or standards, it is ISO 81060-2. So you can get some nighttime reading if you need to go to sleep tonight. But this is the universally established standard that is used to qualify and prove the accuracy of blood pressure monitors. So what we do when we get on the validated device list is we go out to a third party. We do not do our own testing. We do not grade our own homework. We go to an independent company that specializes. There's several of them that specialize in this sort of testing. And so the process generally looks like this. So for a typical study, you would need 85 subjects. So pretty large sample size. You need to have a variance of arm circumferences. And this is very closely tied into the cuff size offerings that you offer. There's a lot of statistical analysis. I won't go into the details, but you have to make sure you have the right people in the right quadrants on the right cuffs, right sizes, different ages, genders, ethnicities, all of those things you want to have as much variable as possible in this study. So when this study occurs, a subject will come in, they'll do their questionnaire stuff, and then they'll sit down and they'll have them rest for 5 minutes. So that is a good practice whenever you take your blood pressure, is to rest for 5 minutes. Just let whatever happened is calm down and kind of just let yourself relax, right? So they'll rest for 5 minutes, and then the study starts by having two facilitators go up, and they will both at the same time take a manual reading, blood pressure reading. So they're both listening in at the same sounds, and they're both looking for when the pressure is changing, and they will record what the systolic and the diastolic is. And this is very important, right? You don't want to have just one person listening because they could be wrong. So you need to make sure you've got a control there. So only the data where the two facilitators are saying, yeah, we agree that this is what the blood pressure is, then they will wait a minute, and they will put the digital blood pressure monitor on, and they will take a measurement. They will wait a minute, and then they will repeat a manual measurement, and then they'll go back, take a digital, back to a manual, back to a digital, back to a manual. So there's multiple measurements that occur here.
So that poor patient's arm must be
yeah, they're getting a lot of pressure on their arm, but most of them are generally okay with it. But what this does is, blood pressure varies, and we see this in the data. I mean, we were talking about a period of half hour, 45 minutes where they're getting tested, and you see variance even from when they first come in to when they leave. So it's very important that we're comparing these measurements to the gold standard, which is the manual measurements, right? And so the way the studies are conducted or analyzed, there's very specific statistical rationales and acceptance criteria driving what constitutes as an accurate blood pressure monitor, looking at the totality of the data from those 85 test subjects. So that's the process of getting the study done. So if you pass this study, this third party will provide you with the study report. You're not done. Now what you need to do is go to an independent journal and have them publish your study. So they will review it and make sure the study was done correctly, that the method was valid, the data was valid, and the results are accurate, right? So it goes under a peer review to make sure that that study actually made sense. And then once it gets published, at that point, you have crossed the threshold and you can be listed as a validated device. And this is very, very, very important. There are a lot of devices out there now that do not go through the validated device process, and for good reason on their part, if I'm being honest, right? Either they don't want to spend the money because they're looking just to make as much money as they can as quickly as possible, or they know they're not going to be able to pass the rigorous study that we do here, so they just elect not to do it. And many customers do not know what the validated device list is, and so it's not really a selling point or a requirement when they're looking for these devices. So my biggest recommendation there is if you are looking for a device, even if it isn't an A&D device, please look for something that is on the validated device list. Very, very important.
And it's interesting you say that, and I can tell you this: it's not just patients that don't know about validated device listing and the VDL. I know so many medical providers that have never heard of it. And like I say, I've been in practices where I've worked at and I've needed to borrow a blood pressure monitor because I've forgotten mine. And they've got monitors that are on the VDL list. And judging from what you've just said in terms of how thoroughly that review is done and tested, that's pretty intense. But it's also a validation that, hey, this blood pressure monitor is extremely accurate and it's pretty much given us the same result as a manual blood pressure reading, which is the gold standard. And just a quick question before I move on to the next one. And I presume the validated device list, the VDL certificate, is done for every single A&D medical device. So the Precision Check Pro has had its own done, and then the Precision Check device, is that correct?
Yes, correct. All of our home use devices are on the VDL. We make sure that we do that because we understand how important it is to demonstrate to our end users that our devices are accurate, and we are willing to put it through the test, through clinical studies to prove that these are accurate devices that work as intended.
Got it. Adam, I'm just going to move on to the next question. I am loving this, by the way. It's so nice to have someone else on the live show. And I hope you come back again another time in the future and join us again, because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions later on as well. That would be really useful to have an engineer like give their input. The next question I wanted to ask is, and this is an interesting we get a lot, by the way. So should an A&D medical home blood pressure monitor, should it be calibrated or checked for accuracy? And I've had patients ask me about this as well. And it's something that I'm like a bit stuck on. So it'd be useful to know what you have to say.
So all of our devices come off the manufacturing floor calibrated. They are calibrated when you get them. And our devices don't require recalibration. So that being said, though, I think it is very, very important that I make this other point, that it's very important that you use your device regularly, use it correctly, try to use it around the same time if you can, to get a good idea of what your baseline blood pressure is. Now your blood pressure varies, right? It does change day to day throughout the day. But at least understanding kind of where your range normally is very important, and just tracking that to understand where you're at. Now, if you start to see some things that are different and you suspect that maybe it isn't accurate, we do encourage people to take their blood pressure monitor with them when they go to a doctor and have them compare a manual check to the blood pressure monitor to see, if there's anything going on. Now, blood pressure monitors, it's electronic device. There are things that can happen, right? There's a PVC bag that is contained that inflates. Pinhole leaks can occur. There can be kink tubing. So there can be things that can occur that can affect, the accuracy of your system. And our devices are all covered with a 5-year warranty. So if you do go to a doctor's office and maybe there's something going on, we encourage you to check for accuracy, but the recalibration, we don't recommend, necessarily going through that for our home use devices.
And that 5-year warranty, just to touch on it, I think it's in the UK, US, and Canada, isn't it? So from my understanding. So yeah, it's just important to know. So we don't need calibration. We don't need to calibrate an A&D medical device. If you have an A&D medical blood pressure monitor, calibration isn't required. However, it's obviously a device that you need to look after. And I actually tell this to patients all the time: if you treat your blood pressure monitor correctly, you use it properly, it's probably going to last you a lifetime. But obviously, if you're not using it properly, you're not storing it properly, etc., and you're not using it, well, things can go, wrong eventually on anything. But obviously, our devices are very, very well made. But like you said as well, and even I was thinking with the actual the filling of the PVC bag inside the cuff, some of our monitors, the A&D medical blood pressure monitors, actually have cuff leak detection, don't they? So I've seen that come up on the screen sometimes. Well, not sometimes, but I've seen it actually on the manual. So it should, theoretically, the sensor will pick it up. Is that right?
It should pick it up. Yeah. I mean, it will notice when there is a gross leak. Absolutely. And it's very, very rare. So I don't want to set anyone up thinking that this is a common thing at all. But of the monitor itself, and then the cuff is the thing that gets the most wear, right? So that is constantly using it, you're throwing it off to the side, it can get pinched, wrapped up in a bag. So the cuff has a warranty for 2 years, or approximately 10,000 uses is kind of what we target with our testing. So it can be used quite a long time, but like anything that is plastic, we do recommend keeping an eye on it, especially as you get around that 2-year mark, just to make sure that there hasn't been any sort of deformation or something going on. Sat in your car for months in the hot sun or something like that, right? So so just a word of note there: the device monitor is a 5-year warranty, but then the cuff, just keep an eye on it after about 2 years and make sure that it's still working as intended. You can replace those cuffs very easily. Just get replacements and just plug it in and go.
And that leads me on to my next question, actually, which you've actually done very well in getting onto that. Is, are blood pressure cuffs interchangeable between different A&D medical blood pressure monitor devices?
So in general, yes, some are, some aren't. I know that's probably the answer you weren't looking for, right? But we have different cuff families that kind of exist. So we've got, for example, we have our ambulatory cuffs, which are designed specifically for continual monitoring, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're wearing a cuff for 24 hours, you don't want that tube dangling around, catching on doorknobs and stuff like that. So we have a different design, different kind of way that one works. That one's not going to work on your home monitors, right? And then there was a recent change, I believe in 2016, 2017. There's a standard released for the connection features for medical air hoses. And we had a kind of proprietary, if you will, kind of connection feature in our older devices that was changed over to meet this industry standard years ago. So we have an ISO cuff and then a non-ISO cuff. So if you bought a blood pressure monitor, say 10 years ago, and you still have that cuff, and you replace the monitor, it may not work on the new monitor just because that connection has changed, and vice versa, right? But generally speaking, they will work. You can also reference the instructions for use that were included with your device. It will list the compatible cuffs that can work with it. And of course, if you do have any questions at all, we have an exceptional customer service team that is on call. If you have a device or a cuff, or you're shopping for something, give us a call. They're happy to answer your questions. Our customer service team is truly exceptional. They are full-time A&D employees. They're all based in North America, the United States and Canada. They speak English and French. And this is what they do, is just focus on A&D products. And so they know these products very well. They're very good at troubleshooting or answering questions. So if you do have a question about compatibility, just give us a call and we will help you out with that.
And that's very true. I guess that's another reason why you want to get a blood pressure monitor from an established company, because there's these little things that you don't even think about, is that, hey, if I need support or help with this, like troubleshooting, do they have like a dedicated support team, which obviously A&D Medical do, and we've signposted people before on the YouTube channel to go and ask the team. Okay, Adam left the stream, but let's see if we can fix it.
I can hear you. Yeah,
Adam, you back. I don't know what happened, but hey, we're good. So yeah, they're really useful, like you said, and you can even send them a message as well, like an email. So you don't even have to ring them if that's easier. So that's perfect. So and I think we have one other blood pressure cuff, don't we? Which is like the extra large one. It's like the extra large one. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but there is one specific cuff that is only able to be used on a special A&D medical blood pressure monitor that has two motors. Yeah, because I don't think a single one can inflate it enough. Is that right?
Right. You need to have a lot of energy to get the pumps working enough to fill up that big of a volume. So we need a different device. So that one is kind of the exception.
Yeah. So that's it. Yeah, got you. So that one won't work on out of the monitors. It has to be used for that specific one. Perfect. So I have one last question for you. Okay. And by the way, the Hove Heretic, I hope that helped answer your question about interchangeable cuffs as well. I'm just replying to a comment, by the way, Adam, on the page. So my last question, Adam, is, and this one's one that I've been thrown off by as well. And I remember you answered it for me when we had a meeting a while ago. And I'd love for you to answer it again for those who obviously weren't there, is, does low battery power affect the accuracy of blood pressure readings? Because I've been, in the past, I've done this before, I've seen low battery and I quickly go and change the batteries, obviously thinking it's going to give us inaccurate readings. So I'd love to hear the engineer's perspective about that.
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic question. We get that question all the time, and it is a really good question to have. The answer is no. The low battery warning, that is an indicator to let you know that these batteries are going to die at some point very soon, but it does not have any impact on the reading. And there's a couple reasons why. The first is we have an inboard DC regulator, which first essentially makes sure that you have the right amount of current and power necessary to power the device and the various systems before a measurement even starts. So if there isn't enough, it's not even going to turn on. It doesn't hit that threshold. It's not going to turn on. Now, the second reason why it is not going to impact anything is because we just kind of talked about it, right? The motors that you have to power. There's a lot of energy required to get that motor and that pump moving to get the air to inflate the cuff. And when we look at that, it's about 500 milliamps of current. So pretty significant for this device, right? Not significant in the terms of, actual consumption power draw, but for the reasons of this discussion, it's very high. That's when it's at its peak, when it's filling this cuff up. So as long as you get up to the point where the cuff gets fully inflated, at that point, it goes from 500 milliamps of current down to about 20 milliamps of current. It is basically just very small, minute detections listening up with the sensors, and then your little display screen. So very low power consumption there. So I kind of liken it to, rock climber. You're climbing up the face of a mountain. It's a ton of work to get up to the top, and you finally get up to the top and you're kind of on some flat ground. It is super easy to walk. If you get up above that top part, you're good to go. You should be able to fix that measurement.
That's nice. Whatever, riding the bike up a hill and then you just go all the way down. That was the best thing when I was younger. So so like you said, so the main battery consumption is actually inflating this cuff, the motor, and then after that, it's just all downhill really. So if it has enough battery to inflate that fully, then you're fine. And if it doesn't inflate fully, will the A&D Medical blood pressure monitor, just switch off or tell you will it error or something like that?
It shouldn't do that. It shouldn't even start the measurement, but I'm sure there's a situation out there that could cause that to happen. If that happens, it will stop and it will just automatically deflate. I'm
always asking these very technical questions. So no, that's been awesome. And thank you so much for coming on, Adam. We've totally gone overboard today. And that cuff answer as well that you gave helped one of the viewers. They've just said, thank you, Abraham and Adam. It's been great having you on, and hopefully we'll see you in the future. But other than that, have a nice day then, and we will speak to you soon, hopefully.
Great. Thank you for having me on. It was great speaking with you all, and hopefully I will see you soon.
Take care. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys. So that was our live show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've answered all the comments, by the way. Let's just double check. We've got Tiger Beredic official said hi. Antonio Fernandez said 6'7". And then we've got a comment from Lady H, by the way. That's what I was going to say. I was going to answer that question and come back to it. Can blood pressure be genetic? Yes, definitely. Genetics can play a big role in blood pressure, and if you have high blood pressure. But also certain factors increase your risk as well, right? So, smoking or drinking a lot of alcohol or being overweight or lack of exercise. So all of these factors play a part too, but obviously genetics can put you at a higher predisposition of getting high blood pressure. So I hope that's helpful. And thank you, D. Henderson. I'm really glad you liked the show. So that's our live show. Like I said, every first Thursday of the month, we go live. So if you're watching this after we've gone live, which a lot of people do, please don't worry. Just leave a comment here or on any of our videos. We post videos every single day. We post health videos on blood pressure and cardiovascular health every single day. So just comment on one of them. We monitor our comments every day, so it will be noted for the next episode. There are a few comments, by the way, that I will reply to in next month's episode because we've just run out of time. But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our channel. We post daily health videos on blood pressure. So if you are interested in blood pressure and heart health, subscribe to us so you are notified. And as we always say, A&D Medical, discover precision. Have a great day.